welcome back to my channel. Quick reminder, if you haven't already, like and subscribe. Do that below. So today we're going to be getting into the top 10 books of my life that have changed my life. And I actually noticed something really cool when I was writing these down. At first I wrote them down like completely randomly, so I had like 10 books in a list, and I was like, okay, yeah, these are some books that have influenced me. And when I looked at them harder, I was like, whoa, mind blown, because I noticed like a really cool pattern. And I noticed from like end to end of my like reading that it kind of was like a discovery of Buddhism. And anyway, you'll see, I'll kind of comment on it as we go. Order. The first book that I ever liked that I read was On the Road by Jack Kerouac. I hated reading in middle school. I was bad at it. I didn't really understand it. Everything felt so like literary to me. I basically read this book like over the summer when I was doing like a summer camp at Columbia, and it just like spoke to me in a really different way than like any other book that I had read previously. It was Jack Kerouac is the author, and he's a really famous American writer. It's a very American book. He actually went to Columbia, I think along with Allen Ginsberg, who's like another writer from this movement that they were a part of called the Beat Generation. And I kind of just like related to them because I was there and studying, and also my first boyfriend ever, this was like also his favorite book, so we bonded over that. Basically it's like Jack Kerouac traveling with his friend Dean, Mariah, I forget the name, and they're just like going across America like really cheaply in a car. Let's read some quotes from On the Road. Because he had no place he could stay in without getting tired of it, because there was nowhere to go but everywhere. Keep rolling under the stars. Sal, we gotta go and never stop going till we get there. Where are we going, man? I don't know, but we gotta go. Boys and girls in America have such a sad time together. Sophistication demands that they submit to sex immediately without proper preliminary talk. No courting talk, real straight talk about souls, for life is holy and every moment is precious. The second huge book in my life is this book, which I actually have in person, the Vogue Fashion book. I loved fashion as a kid. I would sew clothes for my dog. Like I sewed her pleated skirts, and like I researched like how to sew dog clothes so that it would fit her and stuff. And I loved construction. I loved pattern making. I was a really geometric kind of kid. Like I did a lot of origami. Like I even had a first grade teacher, and she was like, "You're so good at origami that you don't have to do your silent sustained reading. You just do origami." So there's like a ton of pictures in here that kind of inspired me. I actually studied fashion for 2 years in school, or at least a year. And it was kind of inspired a lot by photography and by magazines. And like I just love stuff like that. Like that construction is so perfect. And I always wanted to know how to do that and how to, like I kind of felt like I already knew. That's why I kind of hated fashion school, is like I kind of just hated like the idea of being taught how to make things, because I like knew how to make things, you know? Like when the hand is so much a part of pattern making, like there really is an original, unique human touch. So then here's some more like sketches. Like I just loved stuff like that. I actually made like a hoop skirt dress like that once. And then like these really abstract ideas, like things that you would just never see like in a store, but you might see in a magazine editorial. I just loved stuff like that when I was a kid. I love these outfits, these very like Coco Chanel inspired suits. They're so pretty. Twiggy, I loved this image. I love these photo shoots. I loved like everything Twiggy was in. Like she just had such a distinct look, and all of her photographs were so branded. Like she was really a brand before personal branding was like a big thing. Another Coco Chanel inspired suit dress. I love Coco Chanel. She's also a Leo. I love like ephemeral stuff like that. I used to draw things like that with a lot of like blue and green. This book really covers the past, present, and future of fashion. It's an encyclopedia of sorts. It has like a bunch of designers A through Z. It goes through the history of fashion through the 1900s, which is really cool, from like the World War II years where they literally didn't have enough fabric, so they would make things out of like burlap, like dresses. Like they would make beautiful things out of found materials. I also don't have this book, but another big book in my life was 9 Stories, and this was another book, like On the Road, that made me love writing and that I could relate to, and that made me feel like I could be a writer. So A Perfect Day for Banana Fish is basically about this guy named Seymour, and he is a World War II veteran who recently discharged from an army hospital, and it's implied that he has some psychiatric problems. Muriel, his wife, is discussing and having a conversation with her mother, but they're kind of not really concerned about Seymour. They're just talking about themselves, and they're not relating to his condition and not trying to help him at all. And so he goes outside to the beach one day, and he meets this girl, Sybil Carpenter, and she's like this little girl, and she accuses him of dancing with this other little girl at a party they had at the hotel the other night. And he kind of says, like, okay, well, today I'm going to dance with you. And so they're in the water together, and Sybil claims to see a banana fish eating a bunch of bananas. And then she just, like, runs back up the beach and goes to hang out with her mom, who is drinking at a bar. Another story in 9 Stories that I really liked, also weirdly kind of about Buddhism, is called Teddy. And so Teddy is on a luxury ship with his parents. He's a 10-year-old mystic savant. He has socialite parents who are sort of arguing with him. And Teddy was interviewed in Great Britain by a number of academics at prestigious universities about his claims to spiritual enlightenment. So Teddy's like this enlightened 10-year-old who's like getting interviewed by people. And Teddy is kind of indifferent to like material concerns, so he gives his father's expensive camera to his little sister so she can go play with it. So I read this when I was young, maybe like 8th or 9th grade, and it just stuck with me as a reading. Number 4, As Consciousness is Harnessed to Flesh by Susan Sontag. Another huge book for me in learning how to write. Susan Sontag is the first writer that I was like, oh my gosh, I can do this. Susan Sontag like taught me how to write, like, because she's a very philosophical writer, and she's a very famous and acclaimed writer who's not very literary. Like, I always had confidence that I was a good thinker, but I didn't have confidence that I was a good writer. She was married to Annie Leibovitz, which is also a cool fact. Annie Leibovitz is like a really prolific photographer, and some of the most prolific years of Susan Sontag's writing life, she was married to Annie Leibovitz, and they lived like right above each other, like they had like a dual apartment. She explores ideas almost in motifs and without plots. So I was always really bad at plots. I could never figure out what was supposed to happen in a story. And I liked that she would just kind of like talk about things in general. Let's go over some quotes from this book. Pop art, only possible in an affluent society where one can be free to enjoy ironic consumption. I am trying to check my habits of seeing, to counter them for the sake of greater freshness. I am trying to be unfamiliar with what I'm doing. If one could amputate part of one's consciousness, work is experienced as discipline, the background of which is a census, even though it also gives pleasure. One is allowed to become depersonalized in work, to forget the self, to lose contact with its most intimate feelings and needs. Indeed, all that is necessary if one is to give oneself fully to work. Number 5, Concepts of Modern Art, From Fauvism to Postmodernism by Stangos, Nikos. Okay, this was huge for me. When I got to art school, felt like I didn't know the history of art. And I read this book, and it just went like from like 1900s to 2000s, and just gave like all the movements, all the most important artists, what each movement meant, and then it was like pop. Like suddenly I felt like I was in this like realm of people at RISD who like got the history of art, and it was just like one book that took me there. So these are the movements that it goes over. Expressionism, Fauvism, Cubism, Purism, Orphism, Futurism, Vorticism, Dada and Surrealism, Suprematism, Digistil, Constructivism, Abstract Expressionism, Kinetic Art, Pop Art, Op Art, Minimalism, Conceptual Art, Postmodernism, and the Art of Identity, and then the plates. Okay. Number 6! Okay, so this is the Psychic Bible by Genesis P. Orridge. This is kind of a weird one, bear with me. If you're not into this kind of thing, like, no problem. But anyway, this is a Psychic Bible. This was recommended to me by a friend in college, and he was really into this. Basically, it was kind of at RISD that I started really, like, considering the world around me on a critical level. Like, I think when we are taught to analyze literature, like in school, like in high school, we're taught to analyze books. We're not really taught to analyze our surroundings and to analyze our world. And I think RISD kind of taught me that so much of our world is communicated to us subconsciously and through images, and these are things that we're not taught to analyze. So I think the idea here, and this is written by Genesis P. Orridge, who is a pretty famous artist. He actually apparently went to college with one of my professors at RISD in Manchester, England, and at the Royal College of Art. And Genesis is a really interesting dude. Later on in his life, he married someone that he met, and they underwent surgery together to become the same person. They were interested in having like the same gender identity. I don't know if they went to be a girl or went to be a boy or what, but they like went through surgery to become the same person. And they almost have like a very cultish kind of vibe. Like this book is like very cultish and kind of weird. And they have a lot of unique spellings. The book has its own vocabulary. So there's like this idea of magic with a K, C-K, magic. And they talk about practical magic a lot, using sexual energy to manifest personal evolution. So they have a lot of ideas about collages and cut-ups. So this idea is like you take a magazine or you take things that are given to you in the world and you don't take them for their like face value. You cut them up and create something new and manifest something personal through that exploration. And I actually made some collages like this. I was kind of into this book. Okay, so let's read some stuff from this book. It's not art made specifically for other people to see. Another highly interesting aspect of this art is that it is in many ways an anti-art. It is not art made specifically for other people to see, and thereby doesn't fit in with the contemporary ideals of pleasing an art market. What constitutes the essence of all of this? There are so many things that come to mind, but I guess the most quintessential ones are the offering of differing possibilities, of alternative options, of inspiring courage and will, of breaking apart uncomfortable imposed patterns by showing, by example, that after all is possible to reassemble the bits in new and creative ways. Explore daily your deepest desires, fantasies and motives, gradually focusing on what you would like to happen in a perfect world, a perfect situation, taking away all restrictions and practical considerations from what you really want. The mere visualization of that true goal begins the process that makes it happen. Clean out the trappings and debris of compromise, of what you've been told is reasonable for a person in your circumstances. I was pretty into this book, honestly. This influenced a lot of my thinking. Psychic energy and sexual energy are different names for the same force. Our aim is wakefulness. Our enemy is dreamless sleep. Number 7, The Red Book. This book is Carl Jung. You guys probably have heard of Carl Jung. He's a very famous psychologist from the 1900s. In this book, he talks about the subconscious, and he rids his scholarly training to explore more intuitive perceptions of psychology. He kind of is finding Buddhism on his own through subconscious meditation, and this was written from 1914 to 1930. I actually found this book in a really weird way. I was at the spa with my grandma, and on the coffee table at the spa was this giant copy of the Red Book. It had full illustrations and everything, and I opened it and I started looking at the pictures, and I was like, whoa, I have to buy this. I did a little research, and it was really interesting because he was so scared to publish this book during his lifetime because he thought that other scholars would not take his intuitive interpretation seriously. So his children actually published the book posthumously in 2009. You should carry the monastery in yourself. The desert is within you. My speech is imperfect, not because I want to shine with words, but out of the impossibility of finding those words, so I speak in images. With nothing else can I express the words from the depths. He talks a lot about the soul, which I really like. Soul. I thought and spoke much of the soul. I knew many learned words for her. I had judged her and turned her into a scientific object. I did not consider that my soul could not be the object of my judgment and knowledge. Much more are my judgment and knowledge the objects of my soul. You open the gates of the soul to let the dark flood of chaos flow into your order and meaning. If you marry the order to the chaos, you produce the divine child, the supreme meaning beyond meaning and meaninglessness. Number 8. Oh, The Ancient Secret of the Flower of Life. Oh my god, I can't believe I'm talking about this. This is so lame. This book is it's not cultish, it's just kind of like, it's just like into weird energy shit, finding out these like intuitive secrets about energy in the universe and stuff. So I'm just going to tell you some of the top ones. Christ consciousness is like a grid that all conscious beings are linked to consciously. So the idea that we're all part of the same consciousness. Sacred geometry is a spiritual geometric order that exists in energy bodies and the universe, like in every organic cell. So the idea that sacred geometry is like a universal order of geometry that is present in every cell all the way up to the organization of the universe. And this is like in contrast to Euclidean geometry, which is more human-made and more linear. So there's a lot about Egypt and afterlife and resurrection, and again, these Buddhist themes keep coming up in all this reading that I'm doing. It's just like pointing to Buddhism, like, go find it. There's this thing called the Merkaba, which is like an energy field, and like the male and female body have an opposing Merkaba. So the female one has like a flat front, and the male one has a pointy front. And yeah, so like all these geometric shapes and stuff. And this idea that they're like the full human light body is like much taller than we are. And I actually like heard a reference to this in like a song by Halsey, which I thought was pretty cool. So yeah, and then just the idea that there's like a multi-dimensional reality, like outside of capitalism and outside of like what we immediately look at every day. Number 9, the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. So finally I find Buddhism. Finally it just clicks with me. I'm like, there it is. And I Google like best Buddhist books or something, and this came up on the internet, so I ordered it, and it just talked about enlightenment, and I kind of just stopped reading at this point and got really into pop culture. Like after I found enlightenment, like I was like, oh, that's like really it. Like it's really about enlightenment. And like everything in this book just made so much sense and like was all about patience, and like I really looked to this book as like for truth. Like when I don't know the answer to a question, like I'll Google what does Buddhism say on this, you know? And that will help me with my thinking. So, planning for the future is like going fishing in a dry gulch. Nothing ever works out as you planned, so give up all your schemes and ambitions. If you have to go to think about something, make it the uncertainty of the hour of your death. So the book talks a lot about thinking about death. That's what like monks do all day, I guess, is just like think about dying. So, homework for y'all. When we are at last freed from the body that has defined and domesticated our understanding of ourselves for so long, the karmic version of one's life is completely exhausted, but any karma that might be created in the future has not yet begun to crystallize. So what happens in death is that there is a gap or space that is fertile with vast possibility, and that is a moment of tremendous pregnant power, where the only thing that matters or could matter is exactly how our mind is. Stripped of a physical body, mind stands naked, revealed startlingly for what it has always been, the architect of our reality. So this idea that we have an afterlife and like what we're thinking at the time of our death or like the moment after we die will like determine our next life. What is born will die, what has been gathered will be dispersed, what has been accumulated will be exhausted, what has been built up will collapse, and what has been high will be brought low. So Buddhism, like the Red Book, like a lot of these other books that I read, have this idea of like just positive and negative, and like with every good there's a bad, with every black there's a white, like there's always a double-sidedness to things. Always recognize the dreamlike qualities of life and reduce attachment and aversion. Practice good-heartedness towards all beings. Be loving and compassionate no matter what others do to you. What they will do will not matter so much as what you see it, as when you see it as a dream. The trick is to have positive intention during the dream. This is the essential point. That is true spirituality. One thing I also learned from this book is I always thought karma was like if you do something bad will happen to you. It's actually about intention. So this book shows that like as long as your intention is good, that's what really matters. So just keep having a good intention and good things will come your way. Spiritual truth is not something elaborate or esoteric. It is in fact profound common sense. When you realize the nature of the mind, layers of confusion peel away. You don't actually become a Buddha. You simply cease slowly to be deluded. And being a Buddha is not being some omnipotent, super spiritual human, but becoming a true human being. A human being as a whole, called by us the universe, a part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts and feelings as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of his consciousness. This delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest to us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circles of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature within. The last book, number 10. Okay, so the last book is Kim Kardashians Selfish. So this is a photo book, and after I discovered Buddhism, I got really into pop culture, because I was like, okay, like in a world like this, what do I do? Do I go become a monk? Do I go hide? Or do I join the world in some way? You know, and I think I kind of came to the conclusion that I wanted to be in the world. Like, I wanted to have an impact, and I wanted to, you know, learn about how to understand many people. And I think pop culture is the idea of understanding everyone. So I love this photo book by Kim because it takes like a traditional photo book, which is a very like traditional art form, and it puts all her selfies in it. So it kind of elevates her work to like a fine art, which is kind of cool. And she's a pioneer of reality TV, which is arguably a new form of art. And you really see her growth in this book, from like Paris Hilton's awkward assistant with like really bad fashion to the kind of iconic Kim Kardashian like image that you see today. And so, yeah, and I also think it's cool she kind of like was a pioneer of what it means to be an influencer, and that's like a whole new genre of our generation and stuff. So I haven't really spent a lot of time reading this book. It's not really that kind of book, but it did get me thinking a lot about pop culture, and yeah, so that's my 10th book, and I hope you guys enjoyed my 10-book series. If you like this video, you should subscribe, hit the little bell for more videos like this one or different from it.